This is the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Eunice. Welcome to the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Eunice. Today I'm with Professor Adrian Heggerty. How are you?
Hi, Mo. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks. So tell us a bit about yourself, because obviously I know you're a dermatologist, and obviously a professor who works in Solihull Hospital, where I see you a lot. But just tell us a bit about yourself, and yeah.
Okay, well, I'm an old man these days. I have two children. I live on a small farm with a dog. Um, and I've been a doctor since 1978, I think I qualified. And it was fairly set that I was going to be a dermatologist even then, although I went off my wicked way and have fun on the South Coast. And then I got enticed back into dermatology, and I went to work at the Institute of Dermatology in the old days in London, working for a chap called Robin Eady. Now, he's sadly passed away now, but he had a particular interest in EB, a skin disease which causes blistering. You know a bit about that. I don't know about whether your guests know anything about that, but I'll come back to it anyway. So I was interested in that, and I did lots of research with him. And then I had to go off and learn the trade, so to speak. So I disappeared off, and I had all sorts of fun. But I eventually came back into dermatology in the late 80s, and I became a consultant in 1995. So
Wow.
I was appointed as a consultant in Birmingham, and I decided that we needed to shake up dermatology, the skin disease in Birmingham. And so I set up a completely new department in 1998 at Solihull, which has grown and grown and grown, as we say, like Topsy. And now I suppose I'm the old chap. I won't swear, but I'm the old chap in the department. And we now have, at Solihull, we have 18 consultants, and we also control and run the department of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, so there's 12 others. So we're essentially the largest department of dermatology in the country, for which I'm very proud and which is what I wanted. And now, over the last 3 years, I've been given the opportunity as Professor of Dermatology at the University of Birmingham to indulge my interests in research, which I had many years ago into EB. So that's what I do. And in between all that time, I run a small farm with sheep and pigs and a silly dog.
Yeah, really know much about you starting the dermatology unit up in Solihull, and how it's expanded. Like, that's amazing. I didn't know you had that much involvement in it. But before we get into any of that, I am going to ask you one question, which I ask all my guests at the start of every episode.
I don't know anything about football.
Don't worry, it's nothing about football. But yeah, the question is, what is the biggest challenge you're facing in life right now?
You. I don't know really. To decide whether I carry on going or whether I finally retire. And that's the big challenge for me at the moment, because I've been going a very long time, and sometimes it is better to bow out gracefully than to go out with your tail between your legs because you've overrun your time. But I work, as you know, with some really lovely people who are really dedicated to what we do. They're very supportive of me over the years. So I feel I'm surrounded by friends with whom I work, who have the same passion over skin disease and particular type of skin disease. And then I have another group that I work with doing research, who are dedicated and completely sold on the ideas that we have and where we're going. So that's really, surround yourself with supportive people is the big motto out of all this. But my biggest challenge is, how long do I go on for before I go and have some fun elsewhere? I'm a passionate fisherman, so I go off fishing in this country. I fish for trout, have done since I was much smaller than you, and every year now I go off to foreign parts to go fishing for big trout, because I don't have any family at home anymore, and so off I go and on my adventures. But before that, I used to go and diving with sharks. That was my other passion.
Wow, diving with sharks. So you're obviously quite brave then. If you're doing things like that. But what keeps you going? Because like surely going fishing and not having to get up for work every day and stuff. It sounds like the good life, doesn't it? So what
Oh,
keeps?
yes, you say that, but I have a good life anyway. I'm up at 5:30. I'm walking my dog before 6, and this time of year across my fields, and she'll go for a run. We've got some hay meadows at the moment which we haven't cut yet, so she'll run in it, and I'll wander through the things in the sun shining in the early morning. It's the most beautiful existence. And I think the idea of having 5 days a week of going to work and then a weekend is very important. I remember my dad always used to say, the problem with retirement generally is that weekends stop existing. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if you don't have to go to work, then there's no difference between a Friday and a Saturday. And that important punctuation in your life is actually really rather nice. So you've got a new timetable, if you like, in your life at the weekend. So that puts me off a little bit. But I also like working with people with whom I work. But I have a different form of work at home. I've got things to do with the sheep and the pigs every day. And I've got people coming to the farm who help on the farm. So I have a fairly, as we say, full life. So that's what keeps me going, is having a full life. Someone once said to me, if you want something done, ask a busy man. Well, I always worked on the basis that I wasn't that busy, but I would keep on doing extra things. But actually, I think I am a little bit busy, but I love it. And that's what life should be about. And I can't fish all year round. I don't watch football. Diving with sharks at my age is getting a little bit more dangerous, so I'd stop doing it now. So yeah, there's my motivations. I've got a lovely life and nice people like you.
Yeah. I mean, I can sort of understand actually, because if you've been doing it for you know you God, way before I was born, and I'm 21.
Mm.
You know, if you've been doing it for that long, it would be. I think the idea of not going to work and actually retiring, the idea of that must be quite. It must be quite crazy, is it?
Well,
Or
yeah, but you can do it. You can look at it the other way, that you go to work with all the things that you do in your life. So you can have your pastimes, your fun things, but you've got other things to do in your life as well. And I get up in the morning before I go to work. I've got to go and check on the animals across the farm. I've got to feed the pigs, which is my particular animal that I really like. So I go and feed my pigs in the morning with my dog. We go for a walk around the farm. So I've got things to do, just to check up on fences and check up on all sorts of things, check up on the water that we supply to the animals. All those sort of things are, if you like, some people will regard that as work. To me, it's a punctuation, but it is a form of work, I suppose, before I go fishing.
yeah, because I mean the balance, it's very important. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think you're right.
but no matter what, career, yeah, because no matter what career you have, I mean, keeping a balance on things, like I said, is important, because some people will put their careers first, more than their home lives and their families, and I mean, that causes a stir up. So I mean, I think the balance it's really important, isn't it? And
It
it
is.
sounds
You're
like
right.
you've got everything panned out, and got
Yes.
everything.
But always remember that the light at the
Um,
end of the tunnel
yeah,
may well be an oncoming train, mine. So you think you got it all balanced out, and then something comes along that destabilizes you, which is probably half the interest of living, really. And you get used to dealing with the punctuations in life. So you get that balance, but then something comes and unbalances you. Well, that's life, but it's fun. That's thrown me.
yeah. I mean, so like, yeah. So I mean, like, as a child, I mean, we'll go back now to when you was a child, and I mean, growing up, did you want to be a dermatologist, and what you are today,
No, I
is
wanted
that
to
what
be
you
a
are?
vet. I wanted to be a vet.
Oh, is that what you want? So what how did this come about then, and what happened with being
Well,
a vet?
my mum was a mum and a housewife, and my dad was a builder, and I was interested in science, and I always had animals around me, and I thought I'd love to be a vet. But everyone told me that I ought to go off and study medicine, and at that age, you don't really know the difference. And I ended up doing medicine, and I went to a lovely teaching hospital in London, where I have made friends with whom I am still friends 40 odd years on. Actually, it's next year, it's 50 years since I went to medical school. So now you can start to work out how old I am. And we are still, there are probably a dozen of us who speak to each other every month or so still after all these years. So I've had a fantastic group of people. I'm a great family type chap in the sense of having people around me. So we used to call it the family of guys, and I refer to the department as the family of dermatology. We all look out for each other, and it's a great way of living. So you can see that I've sort of moved into one family from my own family to a family of in medicine, and then a family of dermatology, because you surround yourself. You're not an island. No one's an island.
Yeah, I mean, you've been doing it for that long. So, like, what kind of you must have had some tough challenges along the way. What would you say? What would you say was your biggest challenge?
Oh dear, I don't know. What would we say? Bringing up two children, that was quite a challenge. But I'm very proud of them. One works for a publisher, and one works as a mechatronic engineer, which is an engineer who deals with computers controlling robots, basically, and he
Oh,
programs
wow.
them. I thought that would make your eyes open. Yeah, so that's what he
Yeah.
does.
I mean, yeah, I've not ever heard of that before. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
he's a mechatronic engineer. He's pretty good at it as well, I'm afraid to say. And my daughter's married and no children yet, but she has, in her own way, is an academic star. She went to Durham University and then to Oxford, and she's settled down, and she's a powerhouse. They're both powerhouses, and that's good. They get lots out of life, and that's important.
yeah, definitely. I mean,
Raising
I,
children is a real handful, I tell you.
yeah, 'cause I mean, when you was raising children and stuff, like, did they not ever ask questions about what? Because you must have been a very busy man, like the way you are now. So I mean, did you always have a balance then as well? And was you able to spend a lot of time with them, or was that not
What I
possible?
always wanted out of my children was to be there for them.
Hmm.
And you would do your best, but sometimes as you go through your career, you realize that something has to give. And at early times they had to go on the back burner, and at other times work had to go on the back burner. But there's a fantastic balance, and we are great buddies, and I speak to them sort of most days or every other day. So they obviously don't live with me anymore. So yes, no, having children is a joy, but it's a tough joy. If you understand what I'm saying, lots of
Yeah.
interesting things to go through, great experiences.
Yeah, I mean, you've gone through it in the end, haven't you? And you're here now, and you're still working and doing what you do. But what one thing I was curious actually to ask you, and I mean, yeah, your title is being a professor, isn't it? So
Yes.
I mean, what's the difference between a doctor and a professor?
Okay. Well, a doctor, I suppose you need to sort of go back, take a step back. Most doctors, people who've studied medicine, are called doctor, even though they haven't passed an exam called a doctorate. They have a courtesy title called doctor. So a GP, most GPs are just, they're just misters, but out of courtesy over all these years, we've always called them doctor. If you do a higher degree, such as a master, a doctor of medicine rather, or a doctor of philosophy, you become a proper doctor. I actually have a doctor of medicine as well as my medical degree. So if you like, I'm a proper doctor. And then after that, you work, well, it depends where you work, but virtually all doctors work looking after patients directly and don't have much time to do research. A professor, on the other hand, has time to teach, has time to get involved in research, to take new ideas, try and work out interesting things to do, and teach is the big thing to do, passing on your knowledge. So I'm now professor of dermatology, and I'm having a whale of a time. As you know, you and I have talked about projects that I want to do and am doing, and I've got people and I can explain it to them and they get excited by it, and then they'll take over from me when I eventually go, and they will also be excited by it. So the difference between a doctor really is someone who looks after people. Different between a professor is someone who will look after people possibly, but is also interested in teaching and research. So that's the bottom line, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's
remember,
quite interesting.
My dad was a builder. My brother is a professor of medicine. My sister is a lawyer.
Wow.
So we're all doing strange and different things.
I mean, how has the medical field changed over years? Because you've been doing it for so long now, and like how has it changed? Sorry.
In what way has it changed? Well, yeah. I suppose the division between GPs and hospital doctors has got bigger. The training for to be a doctor anyway, as a junior doctor, having done your degree in medicine, is very different, and you work shifts. And when I remember when I was a junior doctor, we would arrive in some of our jobs on a Friday morning, and we would be on call until Monday night. That meant every night as well as the day. And that sounds awful. And it was tough, but when you're young, you get through it. And people actually, you remember it with a certain amount of fondness, because there were several of you around and you all supported each other. So you actually did, you helped each other out. And you worked silly hours. You could often be up for most of 90 odd hours. Which is pretty hard, but my goodness, you get to learn very quickly. And it's a great way of learning when you're young. When at my age, staying up for more than 8 hours, my eyes start to close. But that's the way it is. That's getting older. But no, it has changed massively. Now they have protected time. They work shifts. They have set lectures during their training time, something we never had. We ended up coming out of medical school and going in and being the assistant, the apprentice to the boss, and learning the job from him, which they don't do now.
Oh wow! So yeah, I mean, working all them hours, that would never be allowed now, would it? So
I hate the expression "never be allowed." I have to say that means that someone's dictating what I do, and that upsets me, because actually we accepted it, and after having done it, I know that I learned an awful lot more for doing it that way. If you're forced into a position where you have to get on and do it and use the knowledge that you've learned from in theory, it's a great lesson in your life, and you then don't have to think about certain things that you do, and you can move on. The rest of them, otherwise they struggle, and then they make excuses that they're tired and that sort of thing. But actually, you do learn to cope with it all. So I thought it was actually a fantastic experience, as do most of my contemporaries. As I say, I'm in touch with quite a few of them, about a dozen of us, and we all remember the days fondly, and we have dinners every now and then, and we talk about the silly things we got up to during those times. And we did get up to some pretty silly things. I probably shouldn't tell you all about those, but we got up to some pretty silly things when we were young doctors and medical students. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about obviously the condition I have now, EB. Okay. And what can you explain to the listeners and the viewers what EB is?
Okay, because EB is a lot of people. It's an inherited skin, was a group of inherited skin conditions. So some genes that control the structure of the skin go wrong, and they don't, means that the structure doesn't work properly. And because the structure doesn't work properly, the skin breaks in some way, shape or form and causes a blister. And we divide that up into a sort of superficial type called simplex, epidermolysis bullosa simplex, a deep one which gives you scarring, which is called dystrophic. And it's called dystrophic because that's a funny word for saying your nails are looking all odd, and that's where the name came from, in dystrophic. And junctional because the junction between the top layer of the skin, the epidermis, and the dermis, which is the glue layer, goes wrong. And yours is the junctional version. The glue layer goes wrong. We've been looking at that particularly closely recently, because we think that a lot of people get labeled with this diagnosis with a bad prognosis, but actually the prognosis isn't always bad. And it's a case of looking at the genetics and looking at what the genes do, how they function, and can hopefully start to predict how people will behave, or the skin will behave through their lives. So yes, that's what you've got. You've got junctional epidermolysis bullosa. You've got a problem of the glue between the top layer and the deeper layer. So between the epidermis and the dermis, which are the two layers on the skin. And that's what you've got.
Okay, yeah, I mean, but yeah, as we were speaking about obviously EB and how serious it actually is, and
I
how a
didn't
lot of
talk
people
about the
mistake it for.
severity though, Moyne. I mean, I think it's very difficult to talk about individuals, and so I didn't specifically. I talked about what was going on.
Yeah.
The severity of it varies from person to person and type to type. And one of the things that we've learned very recently is that we can expect to see people who should have a very bad skin problem, who actually it's not as bad as everyone has predicted before. Yeah. So I'm saying the severity of EB we now think is not as easy to predict as everyone thought by the level of the split. And I think you're a case in point. You and I have had this argument and discussion over many times. And hey, look at you now. You're going from strength to strength, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is crazy considering, like growing up as a child, I was always told in the children's hospital that, obviously I was told I wouldn't get past one, and I think now I am 21, so I mean it like, to me, I will say, because of what I go through, but in my experience, it is a serious, from what I deal with, it is quite serious.
But as you've just pointed out, in your case, people said that you weren't going to survive. And I look at you now and I laugh when we first met and you told me that it was a lethal problem you had. And I said, well, it doesn't look too lethal to me. So, which is good. Yeah. Which is good. And it meant that we have an understanding between us that we're going to get it as good as we can for you.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, yeah, so obviously we've just mentioned, because obviously all the freezing in this call is my blank's gone a bit my mind's gone a bit blank now.
Don't worry.
What was I going to ask?
I take over the interview.
Yeah, I think you do a better job than me today.
No.
Yeah,
I'm interested in you. Have you got brothers and sisters? I can't remember. Have you got brothers and sisters?
Who, me? Yeah. I have two brothers, no sisters. But that's what I was gonna ask. Sorry, not So obviously we've been going through a tough time with COVID the last year, or more than a year, obviously now. And how was it working through that period? Because I mean, it must have been tough.
I have to say, and I've done, as you now know, some pretty risky things in my life, particularly the shark diving and jumping out of helicopters, which I go do sometimes when I'm up in the mountains fishing. But coming to work every day with COVID and meeting people who weren't wearing masks, who hadn't been vaccinated, it's been a feeling of a little bit risky because of my age. I'm at high risk of coming a cropper from COVID. And it's not only that, but if you acquire it, you pass it on to the patients as well. So it's a horrible situation, but hopefully, touch wood, we've got through it, and we're coming out the other side. And I know you caught COVID, and look how you bounced back. So that's really good, and I'm delighted. We've had a few patients with EB who've had COVID, and no one's come undone by it, which is really excellent. So good on you.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, did you ever catch COVID?
No. I wore masks all the way through because I'm the senior gentleman in the department. All my colleagues, other dermatologists, said that when they were going to work on the COVID wards and on the medical wards to help out, that I would stay, because of my age, I would stay in the department and try and run the skin department while they were away. I did see a lot of patients while I was there, but touch wood, still haven't caught it yet, and I've been double vaccinated now, so hopefully I'm sort of through the worst of it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think dealing with COVID, it's nothing like. I think I've dealt with worse things before. Obviously, with the condition I have and
Well,
stuff.
I would think so. I mean,
Yeah.
knowing how the things that you have to go through each day, I reckon COVID was probably a walk in the park.
Yeah. It was. Obviously, I wouldn't want to get it again.
No.
But it wasn't like as serious as as I thought it would be. Because I mean, when you look on the news, and I think when you see how many people have suffered with it and sadly have passed away, I think it does scare you quite a bit when you actually do get it. So
yes, I absolutely agree. But then again, you're young, and forget the EB for the moment. You've got a lot of strength, and I think that's also good. Being young and strong, you've actually managed to conquer it, which is excellent. And I'm delighted, and I'm delighted for you as well as your family, but also all the other EB patients that we've had. We've had very few that have had COVID, and they've all come through it with flying colours. So it's excellent.
yeah. So obviously you've been doing, like we mentioned before, you've been doing this for a very long time, and your experience and everything you have. It's been obviously a long time. What has been your greatest success in your personal life and in your professional life?
Well, professionally, I suppose, getting through, creating the department, starting the academic department of dermatology in Birmingham. Those have been really good. In an EB world, when I worked with Robin Eady right at the beginning, I worked on and uncovered some markers on the skin which would identify and enable us to work out what sort of EB people had. And taking those markers, we were then able to reverse engineer what they were identifying and find the genes for different types of EB. And then in the 90s, before I became a consultant, I then did some work on simplex, and also was involved in the first cases to have the gene identified in EB simplex. So I'm really proud of those. I'm really proud of the people like you, and I've got a few others, I won't mention names, who have joined with us and kept it going and maintain that sense of humor and understand that we do our best for you all. And I'm really proud of you all. So that professionally is good. On a personal level, I think, I'm the son of a builder. My brother, who's a professor of medicine, is the son of a builder. And we've achieved what we wanted to do. And we've had lovely families. And so that's very important. And currently, I'm still sort of pushing and doing new things and running a farm as well. So yeah, it's you got to have ambition, and I think I've got a bit of that.
Well, yeah. What does the next year look like for you? I mean, does obviously you mentioned before about you know some about retiring and obviously staying and doing what you're doing and stuff. But are you more towards carrying on being a professor, or are you more towards retiring? How does it look?
At the moment, I'm more towards carrying on doing my research. As you may or may not remember, about 2 or 3 years ago, I went to Saudi Arabia and gave a series of lectures. I was I've also been to Turkey and done the same thing, and I was due to go to Pakistan and talk about EB there, and I quite like to take that up if we can. So that will be really fun. I'd like to get a few more projects going underway at the university, and you've met Dr. Barden, one of my colleagues, who's an academic as well, and he's interested in research. And I'd like to get him through to the next phase of his academic career, because then I would feel that I can start to pass some of the responsibilities on to him, which would be lovely, so that the thing doesn't die a death when I go. So
yeah, no, I mean, I think what you've created and what you've got going on, I don't, it's there to stay now for the next for the next whatever 50 years or whatever it is. I think
I hope so. I hope so. It was necessary.
I think it will, and I think it kind of has to, because what would we do? What would EB patients like myself do?
Yeah, but you're a beacon. Moin, you're a beacon. You've been a beacon all the way through. And I've always been very impressed by your ability to engage with people. And you've created a lot of contacts. And I've been awful. I've come back along the line and actually abused that friendship of yours to make contacts as well, which is fantastic. So together, patients and doctors, we're actually creating the infrastructure to take it forward. It's great. It's great. That's how it should be. I'm no better than you. I just have a different skill set than you. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't like. I think if you never created all this, in Solihull Hospital and stuff, I think I mean, what would actually, that's one thing that's got me thinking, is what would EB patients like myself do once they hit 18 years old? If you didn't create all this, what would happen to us?
You probably would have had to go to London.
Wow, yeah. So I mean, yeah, thanks for we should be thanking you. I think that's the way it should be.
No. It's the other way around.
Save me a monthly trip to London or whatever.
Yes, I'll get the train fare back from you. No, I'm very grateful to you all for engaging with me, dealing with my habits, my foibles, if you like, and helping me to do what I want to do, as well as me being able to try and help you. So I owe that to say thank you to you and all your fellow patients, because without you, I wouldn't have a job. Just remember that one.
So no, I think with the brains you have, you definitely would have had some.
Very good of you to say. This is a mutual appreciation society, Moin. I think we ought to cut out and talk about something else. So. So you're coming diving with me, are you, next with the sharks?
No, I'm not that brave. I'm not that brave.
It doesn't have to be brave. Sharks aren't interested in eating you. Promises.
Of course, sharks are in. I see it all the time on the news or on the internet. That shark.
But there are a lot more people who meet sharks underwater and they go, "Yeah, it's just a shark." They're very beautiful.
I couldn't do that. I don't know how you do it, to be honest, but yeah, I couldn't do that.
You meet some of the people in West Bromwich, and then you could deal with a shark.
Yeah. I mean, whatever you decide to do in the future, I wish you the best of luck, and I'll always be thankful for what you've created. And I mean, I'm sure all the other EB patients will be thinking and saying the same. But before we do wrap this up, I've got to ask you my closing question, and the question is, what would your message of inspiration be to someone that's going through a very tough time at the minute?
Hang on in there. I mean, it will all change. It'll all change for the better, and it's never as bad as you think, and there's always an answer somewhere. It's just a case of waiting and finding it. And I think you've also found that. And you're an example to them all, having come to me telling me you're going to die. And I now look at you and I say, actually, you're a guy that I speak to and say, I didn't understand the football and you explained it to me. We can do it at that level, which is fantastic. So, there's always a way forward. And that's the way to look at it. All right.
Yeah, that's a great message. Where can the listeners find you? I mean,
you mean social media? I don't do social media
or websites or anything with EB or
well, through Deborah. Through Deborah. Deborah
Okay.
have all my details, and the hospital have my details.
Okay, cool. So yeah, thanks very much for coming on.
Mine, it's been a pleasure. It's been a joy,
Yeah.
and I'll see
And
you soon.
apart from the little breakdowns and the freezing, we got there in the end.
Well, I look forward to you taking me to the footy and explaining it all to me, because I still don't bloody understand it.
Yeah, definitely one day. But all the best.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for joining us on the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Eunice. Please comment, like and share to help build our global community.